Hey, all right, this is Lila with episode two. We're going to move on to the August 8th, 2018 journal entry. And I think what I'm going to do with these from now moving forward is actually just read through them all the way because they're relatively short, I think, especially these at the very beginning. I'm going to read through them all the way and then go back and give commentary if there was anything that wasn't like clearly covered, and then if this does ever end up getting some kind of an audience and people have questions, then I'll address them otherwise. Um, but yeah, so I'm going to just read through this, like I said, as far as just kind of like reminiscing purposes and for editing assistance and just kind of getting it off my chest. Okay, so August 8th, 2018. You say that you are going to do your errands today, which include overdrafting your bank account to pay your phone bill, going downtown to early vote, going to the mall to pay said phone bill, and giving me $20 so that I can open my own new, more on that later, checking account. You mentioned that you will have to overdraft your account. After yesterday's check thing, I not only know exactly how much money you have in your account, $15, but I also happen to know how much your phone bill is, $30 plus tax, since I have the same prepaid carrier and we literally have the same phone. You picked them up for us last year, remember? And that you are a chain smoker with no money for cigarettes. So therein lies the real reason that you are overdrawn every month. You do it to yourself and have gotten in backwater from all of the fees. It seems you do not know how to live within your means. Now, I'm not being judgmental, I'm just stating the fact. My checking account is currently overdrawn as well, which is why I went to open a new one at your bank. I had an automatic payments for a yearly subscription come out of my other account, but I need to pay my gym membership for this month. All three times that this charge of $21.57 hits my account, I'll incur a $30 return check fee, totaling an additional $90 on my already negative $69.57 for a grand total of negative $159.57. Since I haven't started my new job yet, I need some help in order to do that. Today's rub is this. My medical assistant job that I am doing for you would generally come with a paycheck, friend, family, or foe. But since you are convinced that I am your friend, that you have done me a favor and are lacking in the reality department, then I suppose I must be grateful for any help you give me with my finances. What I don't understand is why today, after yesterday's discussion slash lesson about banking finances, including the fact that overdrafting your account on purpose is theoretically a form of theft, not a feature of your account, you keep reiterating to me that you have to overdraft your account to pay your phone bill. Due to this fact, you might as well go all the way, help me out with opening a new account so I can pay this bill and keep my fiduciary ball rolling. This attempted guilt trip won't work. You owe me as it stands anyway, as far as I and any other reasonable human being is concerned. You left a bit ago to go down to vote and said that you will get the money tomorrow. Personally, I don't care as long as I can open this account by Friday because the manager at the gym said that would be the cutoff to update my billing information in time. Anyway, at least you have come into your own headspace to acknowledge a reason for mentioning that you have to overdraft your account so many times. I was beginning to wonder if you thought I had some mystical power to just pull money out of my ass. That being said, it isn't the first time I have had someone insinuate that they think I am actually independently wealthy, pretending to be this rogue jungle woman that just lives to sleep on the dirty ground. Are you going to want any of that clam chowder? I asked, since he brought up this container of wonderful smelling soup this morning. Nah, I don't want any, he replied. You never want any of this stuff. You bring it up assuming that I am going to want it or am willing to clean up after it. Just throw away perfectly good food that someone slaved to make, wash the dish to return it, and then lie to them about how good it was when you know full fucking well you never tasted a drop. Okay, well then I'm going to eat it with the leftover rice from last night, I respond. To which you leap to, I already have dinner for tonight in the freezer, so what the fuck? Yes, it's tangentially related, but thanks Captain LF Obvious. LF stands for left field, since he not only has a problem with pointing out the semi-obvious, it's always at least a step away from the actual topic that is technically closed. 2 years of this shit, and I mentally go ballistic at his inability to have a full conversation that doesn't end with him getting the last word, even if it's completely ridiculous. I don't have a bad memory. I remember that you bought a bag of frozen stir fry last night. I don't need to be reminded of what has happened or alerted to the current state of affairs 99% of the time. Since he's hard of hearing, he doesn't always hear what is said to him correctly. However, instead of realizing that he hasn't understood what was said, he invents something to respond to. Usually, this is really self centered. Like the time I yelped while putting pills into my pill box when I popped one of the lids off, and he said, "It's tuna. I'm making tuna." Just because I made a noise, it must have been me asking him a question, and that question must have been, "What are you making?" Why would I care? I had just eaten the soup he brought up this morning. Or perhaps, like, "What's that smell?" Who in the actual fuck doesn't recognize the smell of tuna? So the rub here, doing this puts all of his underlying biases on Front Street, which he likely wouldn't want to do considering the unwarranted level of stupidity, lack of general awareness, or interest in himself that he typically attributes to people. One day, shortly after he started doing shifts downstairs, I think, we ran into his neighbor in the hallway. She is a very nice Korean lady who speaks very little English. She was saying to me, "Oh, long time no see." As we attempted to banter back and forth, he kept interjecting about his working downstairs. He thought she was talking to him about being happy he would be out and about more often or something. So then the two of us get in the elevator. "Yeah, she just found out that I'm going to be working downstairs." He turns to me and says, I can understand mishearing things and making the mistake he made in the hallway, but to turn to me, someone who has quite acute hearing, and have the audacity to tell me what he thought she was saying, straight up awkward. All right, so a few things. First of all, just the little housekeeping issue with the like capitalized bold you. So when I was writing these journals, and then I guess also like the starring and all of this stuff. When I was doing these journals, I was writing them in real time. So like it was a raw, hey, this thing happened and it was irritating to me. And so I typed it into the document and then went back to doing whatever else I was doing. Later, I came back and I cleaned them up and made them more properly formatted and whatever. And my original plan was that I was going to publish these in the book like this. And then I decided to go ahead and do this instead. So anyway, so that's why this is formatted this way. So whenever there's stars, it's a complete and total shift to another thing that he did um, that inspired me to need to write in the journal, and then just kind of the venting thoughts about it. So basically, what was going on here is I had a yearly subscription to something that I had forgotten about. I had the money in my account that would have covered my gym membership for that month, but until this came out and I got charged a $30 overdraft fee, which is why I ended up being like negative $70. In order to pay my gym membership on time, the easiest thing to do was then to just open another account, put the money in that account, and change my billing information at the gym. I mean, if you weren't able to parse this. So the point was is that while I am still only overdrawn $70, I need $20 to not incur any more of these fees that we just talked about yesterday is a bad thing to be doing to yourself, right? What he was doing was so I had mentioned to him, I'm like, hey, like since you have to do all this other stuff anyway, why don't can you get me $20 also so that I can take care of my stuff? And he kind of kept like leaning on this idea of like, well, I have to overdraft my account. I have to overdraft my account. And it's like, right. So like doing it one time, right? So like if you're going to go to the ATM and get out $50 so that you can pay your phone bill and buy your cigarettes, why don't you just get $80, or whatever it would have to be, right? $20 increments at the ATM. So it's like if you're going to go and get $60 to pay your phone bill and buy your cigarettes, why don't you just get $80 so you can give me 20 so that I don't go even further down the hole? But then he kept acting like me asking him for this additional $20 was a problem, right? It's like, bro, you're already doing it, right? So like you're gonna incur one fee. So at this point, I'm like, I still don't think this man understands anything that's really going on with this. I don't think he can grasp it. So as this project moves forward, one thing that I ended up kind of doing with him, whatever it was, like estimating his IQ based on just just your general intellect and your ability to kind of understand and function in the world, which is what it's measuring, right? So when you're dealing with somebody that can't even wrap their head around this, something as simple as overdraft fees, and as we'll see later, how like prepaid postage works and ride sharing and election polling. Like there was a lot about just common adulting that he absolutely could not get his head wrapped around. But then simultaneously would think that he's one of the smartest people in the room, and he would act like everyone needed to just like bend over and listen to him. You know what I mean? It was just like this guy can't even. One thing that he used to do, and I don't really want to do too much of this, but it fits here, is every day he would harp on me about dumping the water out of the soap dish. So he had a soap dish in the shower, right? And every day he'd harp on me, he's like, you have to dump the water out of the soap dish because then otherwise, like, the soap gets soggy, da 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 da. But every morning when I would go in, so like I said, I would shower first. I think I mentioned this in the previous one, but maybe not. Whatever. Um, I would shower first, and then while he was showering, I would make dinner and set up the Netflix and the TV, and all that stuff, right? So he's the one that's showering last. So, anywho, when I would get up in the morning, so one day I was like, this is so bizarre because, like, the way that the soap dish was situated in the shower, it wasn't in the path of the water. Like, when I was showering, it shouldn't be filling up the soap dish, right? So I started getting up in the mornings and I would peek in the shower and the soap dish would be full of water. Right. And so then I started being diligent about making sure it was done. Like, sure enough, every time I got done in the shower, like, there's no water in the soap dish. And so obviously I can figure out ultimately you are the jackass that keeps leaving water in your own soap dish. But then you're harping it like you need to dump the water out of the soap dish. But I think sometimes it's like because he realizes I didn't dump the water out of the soap dish, he thinks that he needs to tell me to do something that I know full well I don't need to do because it's not a problem that I'm dealing with. But every day I have to deal with the redirection of this person telling me to do something that only they need to do because they keep forgetting to do it. And so after reading through this, I actually want to go ahead and change it up a bit. And I'm going to go ahead and read um, the anecdote that I wrote that has to do with the employment portion or like the employment aspect of this, because I think that it needs to kind of be put out there um, right off the bat, considering the sorts of things that I'm talking about already in the beginning of these journals and stuff. Um, So I was going to say, yeah, so the clam chowder thing and whatever, it's like he would do this all the time. People would want to give him food downstairs. Like one of the women that lived in the building actually worked at a relatively decent Japanese restaurant here. And a lot of times, like she would bring home like the breaded chicken or like there would be leftovers from the restaurant, stuff that like keeps well. And like, so he'd come up with like bags of noodles or like bags of like chicken and stuff like that. So it wasn't always necessarily a bad thing. It was just, and it wasn't even just food. It was like just random items and stuff. And he would always bring it upstairs thinking that I would want it. But then the problem is like, if I don't want it, like I remember one time it was like somebody had left like a pile of like Red Book magazines from the 80s and 90s downstairs. And he brought up like 12 of them for it. And I'm like, what do I want with these magazines from 30 years ago? Right. And so, um, but it's like it's kind of like I don't have the heart to tell him like, can you just stop being a raven? Like, can you stop just bringing random junk into the nest kind of a thing? Because I don't want it. Like, if I wanted something, I would just go get it or I would say something. But anyway, I get that this is kind of a bitchy thing to nitpick on, but it would get a little bit old sometimes when he would bring up food. And if I didn't eat it, he would like pressure me to consume it too. So it's like when I say like, hey, do you want any of this clam chowder? Like, I know because he brought it up it's my responsibility to do something with it. And there's no way for me to just dispose of it without him realizing that I've disposed of it. So there was just the one small trash in the kitchen and one small trash in the bathroom, and he took the trash out every single night after dinner. Like there was a time that I had a brush that had broken, a hairbrush, and I threw it away, and he dug it out of the trash and brought it over to me and was like, "Why are you throwing this out? Like, oh, did you, he's like, you dropped your brush in the trash can." He's giving me this look like, how in the hell did you drop your hairbrush in the trash can on accident? Right? And it's like, because it wasn't an accident, it's broken. Look at it, it's broken. Oh, yeah, okay. Da, da, da. But it's like he was like hyper vigilant about the weirdest stuff. And so it's like I already know um, that if I don't consume it, there's no other way. It's going to then end up in the refrigerator until it spoils and goes bad. and end up in the trash anyway, like a week from now, and when I have to then clean it up rotten. Plus, like I love clam chowder, so I wanted it anyway. But the point, though, that I'm just making is like how frustrating it is that he brings this stuff because it was definitely enough for two people, right? So it's like he brings this stuff, but then he never wants any of it. So it's kind of like quit putting this on my back, right? It's like quit doing this. It was irritating, but it's also like he's never after the years of it's like it will never compute that I have a right to set that boundary that like if someone offers you food downstairs and you don't intend or want any of it, then leave it alone. Right? It's not that hard, but he would always just, and he would think that he's doing me some kind of a favor by giving me the opportunity to have this thing, right, that I wouldn't have if he didn't bring it to me, right? But it's like after a while, it's just like, dude, can you just leave it alone? There was a time when I was craving donuts one morning and he was going over to Safeway and I asked him to get me like a maple glazed donut. He brought me two and then proceeded every morning for like a long time. He would just bring me donuts every day. And I finally had to tell him, like, can you stop? Like, this is something I want like once in a while. Like, I wanted it the day I asked you to get it. I don't want this every day. Stop bringing the donuts. So, what did he do the next morning? There's an anecdote about this problem. So, I'm going to shut up about it now. But, like, I literally ended up writing an anecdote about this, the inability to set a boundary and tell him no. Um, and then the last part, yeah, I distinctly remember this situation because his neighbor was literally giving me looks like, why does he keep, what is he talking about? Because she doesn't speak enough English to have understood anything he was saying either anyway. So it was just really weird because she's like, I'm just trying to like say hi to you. And this man is like gibbering on, like, what's he talking about? Right. And so as far as the working downstairs, there was a community room where they had a pool table, a couple computers, a little bit of workout equipment, um, and like a little kitchen area and stuff. So like every morning they would brew coffee and then it was like 50 cents to buy a cup of coffee from there. And that's how they put the money together. And then on holidays they would have like they'd have potlucks, but like the community room would buy, say like for Thanksgiving, like the community room would buy the turkey and the ham and mashed potatoes and stuffing. And okay, I really need to get better about being more diligent about not letting my screen go to sleep. Okay, so anyway, so the community room would buy the main stuff, and then people would bring salads and desserts for the potluck, was the point there. So they would just have somebody downstairs to facilitate things like UPS and FedEx being able to get in the building to deliver packages, the stuff, things like that. So on Wednesdays and Sundays from like 3 to 6 p.m., he was the one then that was doing it. And at 6 o'clock, they would lock the room up for the night and stuff like that. So, um, anyway, so that's what he was talking about, and his neighbor was just kind of giving me the looks of like I don't know why he is thinking I'm talking to him even in the first place. So there was a little bit, and this is a nice segue into this first anecdote then that I'm going to do as well. Um, that over time as well, I started to pick up on the vibe that the rest of the people in the building were aware that he wasn't really quite with it, but not in a really like in kind of a self-important way, right? That he's a little off his chain. And I know that like obviously like this that's going to be a main theme here. What is this intersectionality of an apparent slight intellectual disability combined with this extreme like grandiosity, this extreme self-importance, and this almost white knight syndrome sort of situation when it came to me that just made him insufferable to be around, really. And I was able to put up with this shit for 5 fucking years just to have a roof over my head until I was finally able, like, ended up ultimately, this is where this is going. I ended up getting a job that paid me well enough that I was easily able to get out of this situation and segue into something else. So I ultimately was able to escape this in the way that a person would think that I should be escaping it, right? Like find a job outside the home that pays well enough to support yourself and get the fuck out of here. That's exactly what ends up happening. Um, so just that little happy ending foreshadowing, I guess, is that I am ultimately going to be able to make it out of the situation, but it took 5 years. Whereas here in this state, I think I may have mentioned this in the first one. So, like I said, sorry if this gets a little bit repetitive. But by law, you can only stay at any given shelter for 2 years. And what I've found in my experience is that's not actually long enough to comfortably get out of a situation as dire as being completely unsheltered, houseless, right? It's 2 years isn't enough time. Um, Especially when you think about things like an eviction stays on your record. I think the same as like a bankruptcy, any delinquency, it's like 7 years before it'll fall off your credit report or something like that. And that like people just won't rent to you. Like they always want the references of the last place you rented and stuff like that, so that it's like an eviction could just bar you from being a member of the rental market, period. And that some of these things, and this will end up coming up ultimately as I continue through this series, um, post this situation, um, is the problem of the rental culture in America, just as the way that it stands, period. The way that it operates as an industry is completely fucked up. So yeah, so anyway, I think that's enough for this one. I'm gonna go ahead and make the anecdote a completely separate video. This one should be close to 20 minutes by now anyway, so I'm gonna put that in because I know that this is also a relatively long anecdote, but hopefully with the anecdotes, they were intended to be written to be self-explanatory, right? It's supposed to be a standalone essay about a particular topic, right? That was inspired by the journaling and stuff. So anyway, that being said, that's where I'm headed next. And thank you for listening, and I will see you next one. Bye bye.